You have a full-time job and you are convinced that that is the reason why you can't go to the gym, work on a side hustle, or do anything to improve yourself. And if that sounds like you, I can relate, because during the first 6 months or so of me working at one of the biggest law firms in the world, that is exactly how I used to feel. And I just used to tell myself that I had no time for anything outside of work. The truth though, and what I actually had to tell myself, was that that was complete rubbish, because clearly, I did have time. I just wasn't using my time properly. And once I accepted that, I then started experimenting to try to actually figure out how to get more done whilst juggling a full-time job. And over time, I have figured out a way to train consistently, work on things that matter to me, and still perform at a high level at work. And so in this video, I'm gonna set out exactly how I make it all work. Okay, firstly, before we actually get into the practical tips, let's just completely debunk this notion that you don't have time. And let's do that by doing some basic math. So, an average job, you will be working 40 hours a week. Let's then assume that you sleep 8 hours a night. That's another 56 hours. And that then leaves you with 72 hours every week to do whatever the hell you want. So we need to then realize that when you say you don't have time, that is simply just not true. And what we actually need to be working out is how do we more effectively use that time that we do have. Okay, so let's now actually consider some practical tips to help with this. And tip number one is to time block the things that you want to do in advance. Now, I am a massive fan of time blocking, and I think some of the most productive people would time block their gym sessions, their work sessions, and their personal goals like they would actually time block a meeting, say at work. And time blocking for me really has been a complete game changer, because before I used to do time blocking, I used to really have this sense that I did have all of these things that I wanted to do, but I just had no real sense of direction as to how I would actually achieve them. But now I schedule everything I want to do. And so here's what this looks like for me. I'm filming this on the 1st of April, and here's my calendar for the week. So as you can see, I block out my main work hours. I also block out any commuting time. I put my sleep hours in here, my exercise times, and then also other things that I want to do, like work on my YouTube and also see my family. And having this almost just provides me with this kind of map of what I want to do, and it gives me this clear sense of direction as to how I'm going to achieve the things that I want to. Okay, so the clear action step here is to really work out exactly what it is that you want to be doing, and then schedule those things into your calendar. And once they're in the calendar, you just have to execute and do those things. And yes, that does mean that you will have to do a little bit of upfront thinking, a little bit of upfront work, but it will be so worth it, and it will just make it way easier for you to actually achieve the things that you want to be. Tip number two is to optimize your environment, because our environment really does shape our habits. And I think people often think that they lack discipline, but some of the time it really is just that their environment is forcing them into some of these bad habits. For instance, if you've got your phone with you whilst you're working, you're most likely gonna check it, or if you've got junk food in the house, you're gonna eat it. So instead, we really need to try to optimize our environment to work for us. And there's a couple things here that I think you can do. So firstly, I would really try to eliminate negative cues that lead to your time-wasting behavior. For instance, for me, when I used to work, I was finding that I was wasting so much time on my phone, be it doom scrolling on social media, or just reading random articles on my phone, or checking sports results, or just whatever other rubbish that used to distract me. And I was finding that the work that I was actually trying to do was taking me so much longer than it needed to because of the distraction of the phone. Thankfully, I did ultimately realize that, and I've now implemented this sort of phone protocol, which is that I turn my phone onto grayscale mode, which is where the phone just goes gray, and that makes it very unattractive to go on. And I also just turn the phone face down on my desk whenever I am trying to work, which means I'm not seeing pop-ups, and again, makes it not as enticing to go on. The second thing to do, which is kind of on the flip side, is to try to increase positive cues that are gonna reinforce good behaviors. So for me, I really wanted to get better with my skincare type routine, but I was finding that I was always a bit lazy with this, and particularly sort of at bedtime, I'd always be tired, and I could just never really be bothered to actually do any sort of skin protocol. But to get over that, what I did was I bought a cleanser and a moisturizer that both had pumps on them, so it was very easy to get the liquid out of them. And then I put both of these things by my toothbrush, so it was very obvious before bedtime that those things were there and those were things that I wanted to do. And so I just basically made it as easy as possible for myself to actually then introduce this skincare routine into my going to bed protocol. And so this tip is really all about trying to set yourself up for success by really thinking through the things that you want to achieve and then designing your environment to make doing those things as easy as possible, as well as just trying to make them almost the most obvious thing to do in those situations. Tip number 3 is to just look after yourself, because when it comes to our mood, our motivation, our energy levels, our productivity, those things are so badly impacted by whether or not we are actually looking after ourselves. And I think when it comes to people in these difficult, stressful jobs again, our health and just generally how we look after ourselves is something that is really massively neglected. And again, I know that was definitely the case for me when I first started working at a law firm. I mean, I was barely exercising, I was eating crap, I was drinking quite a bit of alcohol, I was not sleeping very well. Luckily though, I did realize that and did then course correct. And I am so glad that I did, because particularly if you really are wanting to do more things and you just don't want to melt into your couch after work, it is going to be so much easier to do things if you are feeling good and feeling energized and just mentally if you're in a good place. And if you want my quick fire recommendations on exactly what I do here to look after myself, my recommendations would be try to exercise basically every day. You will look and feel a lot better if you do that. Try to sleep around 8 hours. Eat a lot of protein to fuel your muscles, and I would also recommend intermittent fasting. Take creatine and electrolytes, because creatine will increase a molecule known as ATP, which is your body's energy currency, and electrolytes will help to maintain your body's fluid balance, and that will also help with your energy and mood. And finally, try to just drink as little alcohol as possible. And there is really just nothing good that alcohol is doing for you. And I think the less you can drink of it, the better you will feel. And I am finding myself to just be drinking less and less. And I'm really starting to consider whether I should just go teetotal. Tip number 4, appreciate the scarcity of time. And so far, we haven't mentioned discipline. And discipline is something that clearly does play a big part in terms of getting things done. But how do we actually get discipline or increase our discipline levels? And I could just give you some of that generic advice where I just say that you've got to just make discipline a part of your identity and you've got to be the type of person that shows up no matter what. And yes, I do think you can just kind of make a bit of that mindset shift and really just tell yourself to have discipline. But I mean, what exactly does that really mean? Because I think it's hard to just turn a switch and all of a sudden have Jocko Willink level of discipline. But one thing that I do think really does help fuel me and does really help me to find discipline is to really try and remember and appreciate the scarcity of time. Because to state the bloody obvious, but our time on this planet is finite. And so if you keep telling yourself that I don't have time, you're probably going to wake up in 5 years' time, say, and you're going to be in exactly the same place that you're in now. Or even worse, in 30, 40, 50 years' time, whatever it is, you might just look back on your life with a load of regret. And regret is really one of the things that scares me most. And you hear about so many people being on their deathbed and looking back with all this regret and just wishing they had done this and that with their life. So we have to just fucking get after it and just go for the things that we want to do and stop telling ourselves that we don't have time, and instead just start taking action and implementing some of these things that we've been talking about. Because the truth is, the people who succeed, the people who are doing the things that you want to be doing, they have the exact same 24 hours in the day. And so they clearly don't have any more time than you. They are just using that time a lot better. Tip number 5 is the power of a 15-minute walk and 5 minutes of work. And so really, if you do the things we talk about, if you audit your schedule, optimize your environment, look after yourself, and appreciate the scarcity of time, hopefully you will be pretty good to go and you will find it way easier to do things. But despite all those things, I'm sure that you will still have days where you just get home or whatever and you just think, fuck this, I really can't be arsed and I've got no motivation to do a single thing. Well, on those days, I would really try to utilize what I call my 15-5 rule. Okay, so the first part of this is to go outside for a 15-minute walk. And this really is a massive hack I found, because there is something about just getting outside, getting some fresh air, getting your body moving a little bit, maybe you're surrounded by a bit of nature if possible, that really does help. And I really find that as I'm doing this walk, my mood very quickly starts to shift. And by the end of the walk, I am in a much better place and more likely to want to do some of the things that I want to. Also, as I start getting to the end of this walk, I then start telling myself that all I'm going to try and do is 5 minutes of whatever the thing is that I want to do. And I think there's actually quite a lot of scientific and psychological research about how just doing 5 minutes of something can set you into a bit of motion, and then you do get into a bit more of a flow state, and you will then just start to find things a lot easier to do. And to be honest, that is exactly what I've found, because I think often the hardest part about actually getting things done is just that initial thought of getting going with whatever the thing is. But by just telling myself that I'm just going to do these 5 minutes, about 99% of the time, I really then do get into the swing of things. And so that combination of the 15-minute walk to essentially just clear my head and then that 5 minutes of work really does completely transform my mood, and it really does allow me to get all of the things that I want to done, despite how crap I might have been feeling before actually doing those things. A final thing I wanted to consider is just what we should actually be working on outside of work, because I think for a lot of you, you might have this sense that there is all these other things that you want to work on and pursue, but you're just not entirely sure what those things are, and you feel like you don't have a passion and you're kind of in search of this passion. And I know that is definitely how I used to feel, but one thing I've definitely come to realize is that you're not going to find your passion or anything like that by just sitting on your ass. And instead, what we need to do is really just try things. And so firstly, what I recommend here is to really just lean into any hobbies that you have, or just anything that really does bring you joy and excitement. So for me, I have always loved sport and health and fitness ever since I was a youngster. That was always something that I've loved. And so I've come to realize how important health and fitness is for me. And that is now something that I do massively prioritize in my life, and I allocate quite a bit of time towards it, and I have various goals that I'm working towards in those areas. And that really does bring me a sense of joy and fulfillment doing those things. And secondly, my big recommendation would be to not be scared to just try things that you think you might enjoy or might be interested in, and just see what comes of them. And also, don't think that you need to have some perfect plan towards whatever those things are, or some grand vision of how you're going to go about doing those things. Because take this YouTube channel, for instance. I didn't really know if it was going to be some grand love of mine, but I always had this inkling that it might be something that I'd be interested in. And I've also come to realize that YouTube is quite complex and there's a lot that goes into it. And so if I thought that I had to have this complete perfect plan and strategy as to how I was going to go about my YouTube channel, I would have wound up just never making a video, because it would have been impossible to actually come up with that sort of plan. But instead, I just kind of embraced some of that fear and some of that unknown, and just have started making videos, and I'm just trying to learn things as I go and improve my videos. And I've also just come to realize that it is something that I'm really enjoying and actually like putting a lot of work into this. So really, do just try things. And the more things you try, eventually something will stick. And you might then wind up that you do actually find this grand passion that you've been after for so long. And that passion might even be something that you really can try to build or grow something from. And hopefully some of the things that we've discussed in this video will help you to do that, and you will be able to do all of the things that you want to do, even with a demanding job. Thanks very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.